It's a cumulative process. It's you always, the more you experience the world, the more you synthesize and the more creativity you harness.
And I think it's also important to realize that not every aspect of the creative process has to yield something productive or good.